All right, welcome back to day 20 of the 100 horror films in 31 days. I got in five films today. First up is 1963's Twice Told Tales, directed by Sidney Salmon. Of course, it stars Vincent Price and Sebastian Cabot. This is a much more low key anthology films from a horror perspective than some of the other entries. This one this one was pretty tame in all the stories. It's much more about uh, period piece. It's a period piece, but it's also got some horror elements. For example, Sebastian Cabot and Vincent Price in the first episode have discovered the elixir to keep them young. You know, those type of things. But it's lower key on the horror and much more about uh, relationships and things like that. But there are some, obviously there's a horror movie and there's some horror elements to it. It's just, you know, when you compare it to some of the other anthologies, the scares are not quite as much, and it's also longer. It's like 2 hours long. It's not one of my favorite anthologies. Vincent Price is always great in everything he does. It's just there's not a lot of meat on the bones on this one. You know, it's more wraparound stories about love and relationships and staying young, those type of things. But still, decent watch. Probably my least favorite of all the Vincent Price anthologies. I think there's a Blu-ray, a UK Blu-ray out on this somewhere. Um, all right, next up, 1985, Cat's Eye. This is a steelbook I bought for $8 at Best Buy. So I'm not a huge fan of steelbooks, but for $8, hey, why not, right? Um, the steelbooks, I think, kind of steelbooks. One thing I don't like about the steelbooks is they're different from the rest of the collection, and I'm kind of anal retentive about that. But yeah, it's a decent film. Cat's Eye, of course, is based on Stephen King novel. The cat is part of a wraparound story. But I think my favorite story on this one would be the first episode with James Woods, where he's trying to quit smoking, and he goes to this firm that specializes in helping you quit smoking, and they take their job very seriously. So serious that if they catch you uh, falling off the wagon, so to speak, they punish you like in ways you don't want to be punished, like terrorizing your wife and cutting off your finger and things like that. It's a good first story, and then the stories kind of drop off from there. I mean, they probably should have had, in my opinion, the James Wood story last. You know, finished with that one, but you know, it was the strongest of the three stories, but it ended there. I think. I mean, it wasn't bad. It just, you know, Daniel. Let's see, who else is in this? Um, Trying to remember who directed this. Let me see. Who directed Cat's Eye? Yeah, Milton Subotsky produced this, by the way. Of course, it's a Dino De Laurentiis film. Drew Barrymore, of course, is in it. Louis Teague. Yeah, Louis Teague is the director on this. He did a decent job. This release has, I think, an audio commentary track on it as well. So, yeah, 1985's Cat's Eye. Next up, 1967, Vi. Vampire film, very gothic, Russian film. It's actually the first Soviet era horror film ever, and of course it had quite a bit of restrictions on it, but it's still a very moody, atmospheric film about a guy that's being uh, tortured, really, and by this old witch, and she she has put a spell on him, and he in order to get out of the spell, he's got to uh, redeem himself by spending time with this woman that apparently it's a kind of implied, but there was a rape involved and this woman was killed, and he's got to spend time in this church with overnight with this woman who comes back to life. You're just waiting for her to come back to life. Uh, really creative vampire film. It was based on a Gogol story. What's nice about this release is there's Richard Stanley has a 20-minute. I love Richard Stanley. There's like a 20-minute interview with him talking about the background of the story and the film, and uh, it's well done. We're in the last 20 minutes, you know, when the undead come back to life and terrorize this guy is great stuff. So I definitely recommend this release, Vi from Severin. All right, let's see. Next up, I hadn't seen this in a while. Decided to check out this indicator release for John Carpenter's Vampires. I think this is 1998. James Woods and Daniel Baldwin are in this. This is not your. This is. I like the fact that John Carpenter came at the vampire mythos a little differently. He went at this much more action oriented. A lot of the old tropes that you're used to kill off a vampire with, like using garlic or warding them off with a cross, don't work in this set of circumstances. The only thing that works in this film is you got to stab him in the heart with a stake or drag him out into the sunlight. A lot of great action in this. You know, it's just an action vampire film, and certainly a lot different from your typical Gothic style horror films. But I thought that the guy that played the vampire, Griffith, I believe is his name, did a really good job. Vlad Valek was the vampire in this. I enjoyed it a lot. Not one of Carpenter's best films, certainly by a far stretch, but really good, really good. And James Woods was very believable as the vampire hunter. All right, next up, so that's, and last but not least, is 2019's Child's Play. Hey, I like this. And in a lot of ways, I think it's better than the first film. It's got a lot more horror elements. It's played for the scares, and they do a great job with the kills. You know, the difference in this one from the original is that Chucky is a robot, a sophisticated robot. He's not a doll possessed by a killer. But I thought it was great, and I love the girl that played the mother in this. She was awesome in it. Al, what's her name? Let's see. Plaza, Abra Plaza. I thought she was great in this. She's a looker too. Great set of eyes. Great to look. I mean, great to look at on the screen. I loved Child's Play 2019, the remake, and not ashamed to say that. Certainly for the purists, they're going to have a hard time accepting a different scenario with Chucky being a robot as opposed to a possessed doll. But hey, it works, and I enjoyed it. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. I mean, it wasn't perfect, okay, but I think it was a very well done remake. So that's going to do it for day 20. And if you have any comments about those films I watched or other thoughts, put them in the comments section below. Appreciate you watching.